cold fear. They bought my voice, then took my tears. When you look at me now, I'm a poster child, hiding all my pain under a smile. And you'll never see me, because that's not allowed. I was born of light, now I'm a shadow of a shadow.
The Third World War,
We interviewed a young
madness,
woman last
the
night,
tyranny, the
Bronwyn, whose husband took one jab to keep a house over their heads and died very early on from AstraZeneca, one shot. And we just got her on last night as a follow-up. And she's so strong, but you can just see the devastation. And yet the man who runs her state, like in we call it a premier, you'd call it a governor. Well, he got a knighthood from the king. Congratulating him on what a great job he did. And this woman's moving on in her life without the love of her life, and 3 kids, 2 of them who were too young to know the father even passed. So yeah, so we're a bit pissed off.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. So if you don't mind, I'll record this on my end just for the audio piece to link on mine, and then you guys
Sure.
can do whatever with your video.
Yeah, go ahead. No problem.
I just got back from the lake, so I'm a little casual.
Well, it's summer there. It's winter here, you know?
It's summer and it was the 4th of July, so Independence Day. So
Yeah. How was that, considering all the sort of the oppressive thing of the last few years? How's that this 4th of July? Was it a bit hollow, or was there... and plus
not where I'm from.
You got that strange Trump debate and Biden. That was pretty odd.
Was that wacky or what? Yeah. So, I wanted to talk about, is it Dazzle?
Dazzle, yeah, Dazzle is how we say it, yeah.
Dazzle. Okay. I wanted to for sure get that out and then
Sure.
just cover a few other, like your background and how you came to have Cafe Locked Out and a few things like that. So just kind of some basic stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. And we can talk about the debate if you want to.
I'm just wondering how it's taken in America, because over here, we've been seeing videos for ages that showed that Biden has dementia. I mean, but to us, we thought it was common knowledge. But it seems that over there, a lot of people didn't realize, and now they're in shock.
I don't think there's anybody that doesn't realize. I think there's people on the payroll that pretend they don't notice.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it's one of the most embarrassing things. I don't know. He was actually deemed mentally incapable of going to trial, and mentally incompetent, but yet he can be the president. Like, it's shocking.
World.
Yeah.
With the nuclear bombs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ready to hit record? Do you guys have about an hour?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Very good. I will do a little intro and then we'll rock and roll, okay?
No worries.
Welcome back to another episode of Uncensored with Dr. Mollie. I am joined today with guests all the way around the world from Cafe Locked Out. I have Dr. Paul Oosterhuis and Michael Gray Griffith. I had the pleasure to be on their podcast not too long ago, but since then, this tragic story popped up and I just had to have them on so we could get this story out there. So Michael, can you just kind of break into this story a little bit and what happened over in Australia?
Okay, so about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, a young woman called Dazzle got leukemia. My mother believes it was from the Gardasil vaccine. And so she began her fight with leukemia. And what they did to cure it was give her a bone marrow transplant, which she took. And she had to take, because she was born in the Philippines, they didn't have full records of her vaccination status. So she had to take all her childhood vaccinations again. She took all of them. And the bone marrow transplant cured the leukemia, but then the bone marrow. I think Dr. Paul has probably explained better what the bone marrow transplant did to her lungs. You're probably better at
Well,
explaining that, Paul.
she developed graft versus host disease following the bone marrow transplant, and it did damage her lungs. So she got to the stage that she had end stage lung failure, respiratory failure, and we've been trying for the longest time to get her a lung transplant, a double lung transplant, because without it, it was clear that she wasn't going to survive. And the hospital, there are only a small number of hubs where you can get these specialty transplants. And in Sydney, that's St. Vincent's Hospital. And we've been tracking the requirements. They basically said she has to have multiple shots of the COVID gene therapies to before they would let her have the lung transplant. And we and the Mouse Army were pointing out, no, there's evidence that these shots actually will take out the graft. That we pointed out, she's already had COVID. She already had, even in a weakened state, she fought off COVID. So she had natural, she had developed immunity to it naturally. But they insisted that not only did she have multiple catch-up shots of the gene therapy, but a whole series of other jabs. And you can carry on, Michael. She wasn't.
So she had to when I met her was just after she'd done an interview with a transplant doctor, and the transplant doctor said to her, "You have to have 4 COVID shots to get on the list, the transplant list." And for some reason, Dazzle said she didn't want it. She claimed that everything they'd ever given her had made her really sick, and she just had this strong sense she didn't want it. She'd also been in a coma, an induced coma for a few weeks, where they told the family she was going to die, and she kept fighting back. And when I met them, the family had reached out to mainstream media, but they weren't interested in the story. And then they reached out to the free press, and that's where I came into the story. And so what had happened, she'd gone to a meeting with the transplant doctor with her father and her mother. And after the transplant doctor said, well, you can't get on the list, you're a danger to people in the hospital. If you don't take the COVID shot, you're just a danger. Even though she'd been in the hospital for well over a year, unvaccinated. She the doctor then asked her father, this is what her father told me, what do you do for a living? And the father said, well, I'm just looking after the boys now while my wife looks after Dazzle in hospital. And he said, well, you couldn't afford the medication anyway, because there'd be a lot of medication after the transplant, immune response, all that stuff that you guys doctors know about. So it sent Dazzle into a deep depression, and she was 16 then, and she hadn't come out of the room for 4 days, and the family was desperate. And so they got on the phone to me, and I was doing an interview with the dad, and Dazzle came out and talked to us. And this was how the world really first came to know Dazzle. And this is the most profound thing, is when she was in life support, her father had finally been allowed in because he's unvaccinated to say goodbye to her. And she was having a dream, and she wasn't overtly religious. In the dream, she said she was walking somewhere, there was no pain, and there were shooting stars in the sky, and then she came across an illuminated bridge where these people were beckoning her across, these silhouettes. And then a man with long hair put his hand on her shoulder and said, I don't want you to go across the bridge. I want you to go back. And she woke up, stunned everybody that she woke up, got the tubes pulled out of her mouth and was going, who's Eli or Elohim or something like that. And they didn't know. They're asking around and they didn't know. And anyway, she came back. So we joined the story then, and we just started pushing it out there, and then it became the story right up until we lost her recently because she went back to hospital, and she was in this one room for 6 months. And what she said was, if she was given a chance of a transplant, she would rather die on the operating table fighting to live because she really wanted to live, but she didn't want to take this vaccine. And then
Gene therapy.
and then yeah, gene therapy, and then finally, um, that wasn't to be. The doctors would not give in, so she spent the last 6 months in this hospital room waiting to die. It was very painful. In the end, all she wanted to do was go to an amusement arcade that we call Time Zone, which was because she had a mix between being a young woman, very wise young woman, but also a young girl. You know, she'd never been kissed, never been through any of that, and she wanted to feel the sun on her face. And over here in Australia, we're sending $100 million to Ukraine so they can kill their children, and all this money everywhere. But we couldn't find the money just to get Dazzle down into the street so she could feel the sun on the face before she left us. And so finally she passed away. And here's where we are. So I feel it's a line in the sand. I feel Australia has crossed over, and they haven't realized it yet. They've crossed over into an ideological, heartless landscape that is going to be very hard to get back from because they can't see that they've done anything wrong. They really believe it's almost like a religion where the vaccines are miracles and you can't question them. So as far as they're concerned, she's just a heretic that has died. And but the other thing too, a lot of people are attacking the parents, saying that the parents forced her not to take it. You know, like Jehovah Witnesses wouldn't allow children to get blood transfusions. So I went to see her 3 times. So her and I became very close. And I used to ask her, I'd get her on and say, ask her, why aren't you taking them? You know, this. And she goes, I just don't want to take them. She goes, I've got a strong feeling. And when you met the family, she was 17. They'd say she's the head of the family. She's got 3 brothers, younger brothers. She's got a very strong mum. She's got a beautiful father. She's the boss. You know, she's the strongest in the family. And if she's
Yeah.
not going to do something, she ain't going to do it. And that's
And
what
that should
people
be
are
reason
struggling
enough.
with.
That should
But
be reason enough. I don't want to take it.
the
It's
other
called
thing is
informed
over here.
consent, Michael. Informed
Yeah,
consent. In
that's
all
right.
my 32 years of practice, at any stage, you could be prepping someone to go into theatre. You've done all the preparation, you've got all the lines in. They go, no, I've changed my mind. It's done. You know, the moment someone says no, that's informed. That's enough. And that was how you knew that ethics had been completely jettisoned, and even lawfulness had been jettisoned. Because if you go ahead and do something with when consent has been withdrawn, that's called assault. That's not called a procedure, you know. So yeah, so carry on.
I just the last thing before the conversation finishes. There's a over here. Uh, they proudly were stating early on in the pandemic or scamdemic that a child who was 12 could agree to get vaccinated without the parents' consent, without the
Yeah.
parents' knowledge. And so those who are saying the parents were forcing Dazzle not to take it, you can't have it both ways. You can't have a 12-year-old decide that they want to take it and a 17-year-old woman, a young woman, say she doesn't and then say, no, she's not allowed. You got to force her. And I think the saddest thing is when I was at the wake, I watched her. I found her mother sitting alone outside the hotel where we were having it, and I went and sat with her for a while. And she was watching her sons play, and they were from 12 down. And you were just looking at these 12-year-olds and going, they're children. These are babies. They got no way of deciding what's good for their long term. They're babies. And the 2 youngest ones um, were still trying to process that they'd lost Dazzle. You know, they're so young. So And so here where it is. So at the moment, I think the family will be continuing to fight, but at the moment, we're just giving them some space to try heal. I believe the mother who fought so hard, I I seriously doubt that she will recover. I think she'll still cope. I still she'll still be a mother, but her heart is broken forever. The father's too, of course, but yeah, it's been traumatic, and it's ashamed of my country. I can't believe that this is Australia because we are like America. We get behind the underdog. We we are fair. We're a fair people. We're a common sense people. We're a good people. You know, it's not us. To stand by coldly and go, no, you don't take it. Okay, go away. You know, it's just yeah. Here's where we are.
The
Yeah.
story is tragic. I didn't know about the near-death experience, and I think the fact that she was sent back, like it's not your time.
That's right.
That's really powerful.
That's right. So now we wonder, was she sent back as a test for all of us, of which I wrote about and said, look, I think she's sent back as a test for all of us. And so as far as I'm concerned, we failed, you know. We had the technology to fix her. We just didn't have the will to stand up against the establishment, you know. And so I think there's deep spiritual ramifications for our country because of this.
Doc, go ahead. You were going to say something.
It just breaks my heart. She towards the end, all she wanted to do was get out of that room, get into the sunlight. That's all we wanted to manifest for her. And the best they could do was to get her down to the cafeteria on her bed, you know. Since the funeral was and the wake was amazing, but this whole I have a sense of failure because I just wanted to make her dream manifest, you know, in any way I could, and I didn't, and I wanted to get the transplant, and I thought that there was good logic and science that she didn't need these shots. And shouldn't be discriminated. So she's a case of she died from medical discrimination, you know, ultimately. And it was not logical. It was not based in science. It was based in ideology, and that ideology has permeated our whole culture. But we had a single point of failure that we were trying to deal with for Dazzle, and since her passing and seeing the grief and our own personal grief with her loss, I think Michael and I have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we've hardened. We've hardened. I think we're angrier. I think we want to see. We don't want to see another child die. Die from discrimination, or another adult for that matter, die from this sort of medical discrimination. You know, we've got all these anti-discrimination bodies and equality things. None of them did anything during COVID. They all sat on their asses, and while we were busy calling them out and saying, "What use are you? You're useless as tits on a bull. You know, you're not standing up. And so Dazzle is a focal point. But yeah, I think the main feeling is personally failure. Because I wanted to get it out, you know, and people all around the world were pulling, and can we fly here and can we fly there, and what can we do to get it a transplant? And we couldn't even get her out of her room.
Yeah,
You know?
it's
Another
hard to move
tragic
when they
thing.
get sick. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
another tragic thing that happened was we were following the stories of several other people that couldn't get on the list, and I called this one woman. I won't tell her name, and she needed a kidney transplant, and she was a young mum, had a young baby, and and when I called her up, this was 2 days before we lost Dazzle. To see how she was going, I found out that she'd had to transplant, And what had happened was she'd gone to the transplant board, to the doctors, sat down and pleaded her case. And at the end of the interview, the doctors said, well, there's no official mandate requiring that you have to have the COVID vaccine to be on the list. And so we discovered just on the eve of losing Dazzle that it was a doctor's decision. This was a decision by the doctors not to allow Dazzle to take it. It wasn't the hospital, because the hospital's been claiming there's no mandate. So this was a personal decision by the transplant doctors not to give her that chance. So
And Jicky Leaks, Jicky Leaks had an interesting thread around this, where the person that they were claiming that they needed a COVID responded back to him on Twitter that, oh, I'm in the UK and there's no mandate here for the shot for. And he said, there you go, you've got to go ahead and give the, all they did was they quietly moved that doctor off the transplant leadership role. But, you know, the discrimination and the lack of scientific rigor, you know, I noticed the other day that Donald Trump talked about childhood chronic disease, and that was a real video, wasn't it? That wasn't a deep fake, because the things he was mentioning sounded a lot like the coincidence I've been talking about for the last few years, you know. But it is related, because, you know, these shots, I've been aware, I read the paper of Dr. Paul Thomas. I'm still trying to get a hold of him, and James Lyons Weiler wrote a paper that got retracted. He was looking at his own practice. He had actually a control group of vaccinated and unvaccinated children. And I remember, this is the sort of stuff I got censored, Mollie. You know, I'd put up these charts, and you'd see, you get an interesting perspective, because you put it up and then it gets blocked, you know, this is banned material. But it's really relevant, because I was pointing to, I think I know where coincidence lies. And all you need to do is look at the Amish, like Steve Kirsch has been calling out. This is why the importance of real control groups to study the effectiveness of drugs. And this whole category that we call vaccines and childhood vaccines is basically an evidence-free zone. And has been now elevated to a religion which is killing people and being used as a weapon. So, yeah.
So a few things to break down there. First of all, Dr. Paul Thomas from Oregon or Washington out west in the US, he lost his medical license over that. It is his data. He published it. The CDC had no data to refute what he published, because they'd never done the research, and he yet lost his medical license. There's another doctor, Liz Mumper, who works with FLCCC. She published like a 10 or 15-year experience, and she said, I got fact-checked the day after I posted it. Like, how can you fact-check my data? But I want to get into the medicine of this a little bit, because, again, it's a young person. You know, we all know that it was wrong for so many reasons. But when you dig into the medicine of this, you know, I've taken care of transplant patients. I'm guessing you have as well. You're sewing tiny little vascular anastomoses together. Your biggest concern at post-op is that you're going to clot that off. And so I don't know how they can justify I mean, if you just back out of the story and look at the science piece of it, they're giving something that's going to make the patient clot more. You know, the outcomes aren't better.
No. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense on so many levels. You know, remember that safe and effective were two lies, and
Yes.
and we call it a clot shot and a cancer shot for good reason. You know, I heard a pathologist say there were at least 21 mechanisms identified where it enhances clotting, and you're quite right. They're tiny anastomoses. Clotting is your number one enemy, and next to rejection. And there's no way it could help. So we're dealing with this type of insanity.
Yeah,
It,
we
it,
are.
it,
Dr. Peter McCulloch, we had him on, and he said, look, there's a paper come out which shows that double lung transplant people who've been vaccinated are failing. It's not working. So we
Yeah.
pushed that forward too, but they just
yeah,
wouldn't
I
hear.
posted that. I posted that on Twitter too. You know, with the moment we saw evidence that showed that this mandating her to get these shots was not in medically based, but there was no response.
Anecdotally, we had a nurse in our office who we were connected to her. She worked in a pediatric cardiovascular ICU. So she took care of the kids getting heart transplants, the babies and the kids. 50% were rejecting after they forced the COVID shots. 50% rejection. Like, there aren't that many pediatric hearts to go around. I can't imagine a system that doesn't put the brakes on that immediately and say, we've got a major problem. You know, I do think there's a special ethical cutout in the transplant world, just because there's such a lack of resource, right? There's such a lack of organs to go around. So there are some specific things that transplant patients have to do that not everybody has to do. Doc, do you want to go over some of those just for the listener out there that might not be familiar with those?
Well, like you said, I think what you're getting at is, like, if you've got someone who has liver failure and is an alcoholic, then you don't want to be giving a scarce liver to someone who's going to then trash it, you know, by continuing to drink. And I think that's the sort of point. They treated Dazzle's non-compliance with the synthetic gene shot as if it was an ethical. She wasn't an ethical person deserving of this scarce resource, and it wasn't science-based. It was this wiggle room you have when you're sitting on a transplant board, and you don't want to waste a scarce resource. And I agree with that. I understand that. That makes perfect sense. We're saying the evidence actually points the other direction, that you should not be giving these shots to your transplant patients. You should be offering them early treatment if they haven't already got past immunity. And early treatment was the thing that has always been left out of every discussion. When I remember in 2021, when I was talking to my colleagues, I was saying, so great, you're starting to see some patients in the hospitals. How are you giving them early treatment? And the best they could get to was a bit of steroid and remdesivir. And I got multiple calls from people around Australia where they were being subjected to enormous coercion within the ICUs to take remdesivir. You know, enormous coercion. They had to, and definitely, there was no way that they were going to offer them something like ivermectin in the setting of COVID, or even hydroxychloroquine. So it's been a hard time, and I'm here on a farm with my sister and my brother-in-law. He actually had the temerity to order some ivermectin for himself and his family from over the internet, and it got intercepted by customs, and then they sent him a letter saying, "You do this again, we're going to imprison you for ordering ivermectin." Now, this is a drug that is the single most useful drug for treatment of COVID, treatment of vaccine injuries. It even has, the story we did last night was the woman who lost her husband to a turbo cancer. We should be able to offer everything to people in that circumstance, but even not in immediate life-threatening cancer out of control circumstances, but especially those, and we still live in a regime where the focus is to restrict access to safe, natural, and generic drugs. It's evil.
So I want to get into how Australia lost its way so much. But first, I do want to take a minute and each of you introduce yourselves and your background and like how you ended up as activists in this, because you both started out in very different fields, correct, Michael?
Yeah, I was a playwright. I was independently funded playwright, had my own theatre company. We were writing plays aimed at 45 people plus, and it's a niche market over here. Most Australians never go to the theatre, but we were carving ourselves a living. I was happy as Larry. Then all this happened, and they came out with an announcement, and they were celebrating the fact that the theaters were going to reopen, but they were going to be segregated. Only the vaccinated could go. So I made an announcement that segregation is a cancer of the culture's soul, and my theatre company won't participate. So I was cancelled, and on the very same day, I thought, okay, well, there's my career gone, and I'm sort of in my late 50s, and my kids are aiming towards 20, and I don't want to offer this world to them. I think this has to be fought. So I could see freedom of speech was under attack. So I started the show. Was called Cafe Lockdown, and I just basically got anyone on like we're doing now, and just talked freely to defend free speech by exercising it. Then I started going to the protests, and then I was at the shrine when you saw the shooting at the shrine. I was arrested there and shot by a rubber bullet earlier in the day that day. And we saw things that literally should have been, North Korea should have been the only place you see them. Basically, it was two ideologies clashing. There was the new Australia with its law that basically said Australia, land of the free, as long as you do as you're told, with its henchmen of police dressed like stormtroopers. And then there was us, people of all different ages, from grandmothers to young people, holding freedom signs and singing the national anthem. And they were savagely attacking us, like savages. They were. I mean, if you look at the shooting at the shrine, um, the police and people say, oh, they weren't Australians, they were brought in from overseas, but they weren't. They were Australians. They were loving shooting Australians running away, and so we saw all these things. Then I ended up in Canberra, where they had about 1 million people came from all over Australia to demand or just to be heard for freedom. It was very peaceful, and they got attacked there too. And then I went around Australia for 115 days, town to town, recording people's stories unedited to sort of uh, collate an alternative history to COVID, because there was resistance in every town. And since then, I've been hooking up with Paul a lot. We do a lot of shows together, Monday, Sunday nights now, and that's it. Cafe Lockdown's just grown. It's basically like an online community, and I believe our job now is just to keep our side sane, that you're not crazy. And we've just scored a 3,649-day ban on Cafe Lockdown. It's 10 years almost from Mark Zuckerberg. Thanks, Mark. Uh, Basically, for just sharing Australian stories, Australians who have questions. In this new Australia, you can't question. Questioning is misinformation. And here's where we are, fighting for freedom in this strange world where most people are walking around blissfully ignorant, like lobotomized Hindu cows, really. And you just struggle to stay sane. And amongst these blissfully happy people going around like nothing's happened, we lose young women like Dazzle and others. The death rate's off the scale. The birth rate is collapsing. Economically, we're being squeezed, and there's no reason for it. We're so wealthy, and so we keep fighting now. There's what we believe is a war. I really believe it's a war, a strange war on humanity itself, and it's borderless. I think they just want us to be enslaved, And so this is what I'm finding now. And so that's me in a nutshell. And Paul.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dr. Osterhouse, tell us your story.
Well, it feels like millennia ago that I was I practiced for 32 years as a critical care doctor, mainly in anesthesia, but also I spent quite a bit of time in intensive cares and in resus bays around the hospitals, and I carried the emergency pager for decades. So I did more than my fair share. I say I've seen more cardiac arrests than I've had hot breakfasts, and I think it's true. Um, um, and that made sense. I considered it a great privilege to be, on the cutting line, the first call when the sickest person in the hospital needs your help. And I've done it so much that I felt I was very effective. And like Pierre Corey, I had over the years I got interested in different things. So one of my things was difficult airway management. So using fiber optics and all these gizmos. I was one of the first to bring that, and I was very deep into airway management, which meant I eat, slept, and drank airways and masks of all kinds in all sorts of positions, and so I understood that the Bat Lady suit worked, but we couldn't all walk around with powered air purified respirators, in and the other thing I was passionate about was point of care ultrasound, like Pierre Corey. He said we're brothers from different mothers, because I was trying to bring that also into practice, point of care ultrasound, because of amazing modality. So that as background, evidence based was my thing, and I was always pointing out safety. It was, to me, anesthesia was a lot like, and critical care was a lot like being a pilot. You if you identify risk, you have to call it out, and you attend to it. That's how you improve safety and innovation. You don't just do things because you've always done it. I'm always thinking, how can we improve things anyway. So 2020 came. Initially, I heard about the virus. I was earlier than anyone in the department. I was already trying out full face elastomeric masks and thinking, how do we actually provide masks that would protect us if there is a deadly airborne pathogen and I got threatened by the medical director, say, you're scaring patients. If you want to do this, you better not turn up to your list. And I thought, and then the next thing, one of my anesthetic nurses had come back from Iran with COVID and was in ICU. And they said, oh, now you have to take 2 weeks in home quarantine. And eventually they said, oh, see, I think you were right to think about it. So I was deep in just working the problem. And then by March of 2020, I saw the same video that Dr. Zeb Zelenko saw, the MedCram episode 34, and I realized, and I was telling my colleagues, you don't need to be fearful of COVID. We can treat this. Zinc ionophores, vitamin D, and by zinc ionophores I include, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, doxycycline, azithromycin, all these good things. We didn't need to be scared. And what happened was, for the next year and a half, I would wander. I stayed long enough in the system to be trained in some of the protocols that were coming for COVID, the do not resuscitation orders, the intubation protocols that they'd brought in for COVID management. And there was something that didn't sit right with me about it. It was fear-based. It was like, we don't want to have the virus particles anywhere, so we're going to, and I withdrew from my lists and my commitments, and basically spent the next year and a half telling everyone about early treatment, including my colleagues. You don't need to be fearful of this. And I responded to a fear campaign on Facebook, where I said this to a registrar of the hospital where I had trained, who was my junior. I was a senior specialist, and said, look, our life is not over. Just tell everyone to take early treatment. And they said, this is medical misinformation. The next thing that happened was that, but what was odd in that year and a half is it just didn't land. It was like, you could tell people it, and it was like, showering in a raincoat. It just washed straight off of this information, even though they knew that I had expertise and that I had reasons for saying the things I was saying. So then it got to August 2021, and I was very deeply campaigning against the children getting, the FDA approvals for the younger and younger age groups. I was involved with on Clubhouse and other to put in. I remember one stage we went from 300 submissions to the FDA to over 100,000 submissions. Why the children shouldn't be getting these shots. The obvious one being that they're not at risk from COVID. There were whole countries where healthy children, not one healthy child had died from COVID. And so there was, I tweeted the health minister in 2021, and I showed them a chart of infection fatality rate versus age. And I said, today we've got 24,000 children being injected, coerced into injection down the road from me in the stadium in the absence of their parents. Look at the rate. If you multiply that by 24,000, you expect 0 children to die from COVID. If even one of these children dies, you have a signal of harm. And if you're not watching for it, you will be held culpable. So in 2021, I was going through my, guys, accountability is coming. You may think I'm nuts, but I'm putting you on notice that a crime is in progress, and culpability, culpability and accountability is coming. And 2 hours after that tweet, I suddenly got a call from the medical council, emergency suspension hearing, emergency action powers. So I became the first doctor in Australia to be suspended for talking about all this. But I was followed by about 29 others in fairly short thing. And at first I wasn't going to turn up to the hearing because I knew it was a kangaroo court. But I turned up because I thought, great, I can tell them about the good news of early treatment. and I can put all the concerns, no long-term safety data, infringement of informed consent. You need the benefits and the harms. This is a gene therapy being passed off as a vaccine. I laid it all out, put it on the public record, and they suspended me the same day. But what I did next was I went to the Supreme Court in February 2022, and I put in a summons and argued that they had not acted lawfully, that they had acted beyond the ultra vires, that they were beyond the powers in the law. I didn't argue anything I said was right. I just said they were acting unlawfully. They were acting beyond their powers. And by May, with a bit of luck, without a lawyer, just me arguing in the Supreme Court, which if you told me a year before that I would be arguing in the Supreme Court without a lawyer and actually get my suspension overturned, I would have told you were nuts. There is no way. But such are the times that I felt compelled to do this, and they did drop my suspension, but they didn't drop the vaccine mandates, or so-called vaccine mandates. So I never went back to work, and I've become a full-time activist, and that's my story.
Now, can I add to his story? The first time he came on our show, because I was doing most actors and people in the entertainment industry went over. There's very few of us. And I had another actor, Damien Richardson, who was on our side. We were doing a show together, and we got Dr. Paul on, and he had a huge tube of ivermectin, horse paste, which he was just constantly squirting into his mouth on show in Australia. And you're just thinking, who's this guy? But what we found out later, and he didn't bring up them, but I think this is really important. He was he had the expertise of saving blue babies, and he's a huge man. He's an enormous guy, and I just have this vision of there he is bringing these babies that are struggling to cross from, wherever they came from and take their first breath. And so there's all these Australians walking around because he managed to save their lives. It's a great loss to Australia to not have him in the hospital. And we have other doctors, similar doctors, that are the same. So it's been an honor to work with him. And now we just do this. This is what we do, trying to call it out.
But I'm still following my Hippocratic oath. You see, it happened that a big part of my practice was obstetric anesthesia. So I dealt a lot with pregnant women and the resuscitation of their babies and the care of their babies. And so it me, the protection of their babies and these women is what I've done all my life, and in the what I've been all my practicing life. So I haven't deviated. I haven't deviated at all from what I've always done. I'm still advocating for safety. I'm still advocating for the babies, for the children, for the pregnant mothers that I've always looked after.
Yeah, just in a different form. So if somebody's listening to this,
I've been attacked.
if somebody's listening to this and wants to follow Cafe Locked Out, support what you're doing, where do they find you? Where do they follow you?
Twitter and Rumble is probably where we live now. We've got a few secondary and third Facebook pages, which are heavily censored. The major page had over 100,000 followers, which I got while I was touring around Australia. But once we reached Darwin, Facebook actually said, we're taking your follow button away. And so the page, we probably could have had 200,000-300,000 by now, but the page stayed there because the thing was, see, we weren't editing the interviews we did with people. We were just letting them speak. So it was like historical records. And these people's stories were amazing. We had pearl fishermen who couldn't go fishing for pearls because they were unjabbed. Because, as you know, COVID is waiting 30 meters under the water to infect divers. Cunning little thing that it is. And I remember one woman I interviewed. Her daughter had taken it. Her daughter was like 50, and absolutely mad jabber, jabbed the kids, jabbed everything, and then on a second shot, got that tinnitus, and it was so loud that they couldn't treat it, and she watched her daughter go from hospital to a mental hospital to eventually killing herself simply because of this ringing in her ears. And you've got to record these stories, and you're almost recording to go, this happened. This is not a statistic. This is a real woman who obeyed the government and is now gone. And like last night, the tragic thing last night was with this man who took it. He's not. They cremate them straight away. There's no autopsy. He's 37 years old. 1 minute he doesn't have cancer. 11 weeks later he's dead because the cancer's all through him. There's nothing they can do. The oncologists are saying they've never seen a cancer like this. And there's nothing, just straight to the crematorium. And like, oh, it's just cancer. So as a community, we don't even have the moral fortitude to allow these people to die in the truth. You've got to literally, and right now, as I'm seeing it going, like, because my kids aren't jabbed, but that was because my ex-wife's decision, which I'm glad she made. But basically, we've got a world now where medical science and big pharma is saying your child has come here and is incapable of living on this planet unless it's full of our juice. And so you're filling it from the moment it's born, and you're going like this. And then the other story we had the other day was a man who had a massive ulcer on his leg. He's got a blood clot from his ankle to his thigh. And it used to be, a lot of stuff used to be free. We had free healthcare. All that's gone. So this man has spent $100,000 trying to get better. Now he's lost his house. So he's got to choose between his health and shelter. And he was living under a bridge when I reached out to him. And he was on the verge of basically, he was in Canada, they'd be offering him maids. But our community gave him enough money to get all his specialists done after our story. We're the lepers in our country. But basically, the other side is now is setting up a community run by corporations where there's two categories. You're either an asset or you're a liability. And if you're a liability, we will medically milk you, economically milk you till there's nothing left. And then you can go kill yourself, whatever. We don't care. You're gone. That's what we're creating. And that's not a world we want to leave to our kids or our grandkids. We just can't go. We can't keep heading in this direction where basically defaulting to silence is how you survive. We can't head in that direction. We're not heading anywhere where a human soul wants to live.
Mollie, to answer your
Want
question,
freedom.
we've not been great at self-promotion. I think we just do our stuff, but and we've been running from censor to censor. So we
Oh my
migrate
God.
we migrate to whatever platform allows Australians and us to speak our truth, speak
Yeah.
freely. At the moment, that is rumble.com. So if you go rumble.com and you put in Cafe Lockdown, or you put in my name, Dr. Paul Oosterhuis with 2 O's, Sterhuis, you'll find, I was surprised. There's lots of stuff that I've done, not even interviews with Peter McCullough on other platforms. So rumble.com or on Twitter, lockdown, or you at Dragonfishy. I'm DRAGONFISHY. Dragon. That's where you'll find. That's where you can find all our stuff, and it's starting to sort of build up. We've done quite a bit. It's a great pleasure that we've had a chance to talk with amazing people like yourself.
Absolutely. And we have a thing. So initially it was called Cafe Lockdown because we were in Melbourne, which was the epicenter of the real crap. And all the cafes were locked down. But when they opened it, I wasn't allowed in. So I just changed it to Cafe Locked Out because I'm locked out. So it became a symbol of the segregation. And now it's just stuck. But now it's not just us. Now we have a channel. We have about 7 streamers that stream to it and other people that put onto it. So it's becoming a community of brave people who do what we do, interview people or just have their say. We even have a grandmother show called Courage in the Cardigan, called the Cardi Girls, because our movement has been full of feisty grandmothers who are not scared of anything. And they come on a Tuesday night and they'll have their say. And it's so refreshing. It's like listening to elders. They might not know how to program your phone, but they know how the soul works. And this is where we are. So we're a part of the freedom community in Australia that's fighting disillusionment and fighting our greatest threat, which is apathy. And what I believe in Australia now, I don't know if this is in America, but I believe there's 3 people in Australia now. There's the actively asleep because they believe they're going to get a better job if they push the lie that the government's telling. There's the actively awake, which is us, and then there's the passively asleep. There's a passively awake. This group of people who know something bad's happening, but they're just trying to ride out the storm. And if they see our mob having great successes, they might join us. But I think all through history, these people have existed, and they're the architects of history. So in Russia, they stayed actively awake while the Iron Curtain was built around them. By the time they finally say they want to have their say, they're on a train to a gulag somewhere. And I think this is the danger. The greatest danger humanity faces is apathy, a decision that they're going to do nothing and try to ride it out and hope that it all sorts itself out. And I don't think it will. I think activism is the
You
way
can't comply your way with
you can't
tyranny. You
comply your
can't
way
comply
out
your
of
way
tyranny.
out of tyranny.
Yeah.
So you've got to, at some point, you've got to take action. And
Gotta say no.
we're looking for solutions. We're looking at ways that will empower people to say no with future tyranny, because this is not over. This was not even about health. Ultimately, this is, like you say, this was a war against the freedom of humanity. This is a war to enslave humanity, and we're as ragtag as we are, we're the front line of defense, it feels, against tyranny. And so we encourage people to find us and join.
One of the fascinating things I heard going back to the American Revolution, it was only 3% of the population that fought for America's freedom.
Yeah.
And to hear that 3% of the population made such a substantial change in people's lives,
Yeah.
we don't have to get 50% of people on our side, I don't think. We
No.
just have to be the loud ones and keep shouting the truth. I have a couple more questions before I wrap, and I'm sorry, I have 3 dogs that are misbehaving
Yeah, I
terribly
see.
all at once. So I'm trying to keep them quiet. How do you think Australia got this bad in the first place?
Do you want to have a crack at that, Paul?
I think we were targeted. I think all the Five Eyes nations were targeted. You know, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Within us, there were parts. There were had areas of special tactics and weapons. Like Melbourne had the longest lockdowns of anywhere in the world. That's part what drew me to Michael and the Victorians, because I thought this is the center of the tyranny. This is the center of the corruption. But it's a global thing. Why Australia? I don't know. We have that background, but it's clearly been targeted against the West. It's clearly been targeted against the Five Eyes nations, and the Five Eyes nations, even within Australia. Like I say, the sad thing is there's not one place in Australia that's like Florida. Like, I'm going to go there. They're going to treat us with respect. So it's a global thing, but yes, we've definitely been targeted.
I think a lot of it is wealth. Australia became wealthy. They've got a pile of dirt and they don't want to give it up. And I think our country has been living on myths of who we thought we were. And we thought we were Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee. We thought we were basically in our darkest times, we thought we'd be Schindler and we'd actually hide Anne Frank. And instead, it turns out you basically give us a little bit of fear, and we're pointing Anne Frank out before you've even asked where she is. And I think our country now has lost its identity, and people are lost. They don't know who they are. They don't know even where they are. Everything's changed, and everything's marketing. The Prime Minister has never once mentioned the excess deaths. They're all saying everything's fine, and I think the only difference between the only thing that George Orwell got wrong in 1984 was marketing. In his world, everything was dark and grey and rats and skinny, but in fact, the people are overweight, and there's lots of bullshit you can buy, and there's reality shows, and there's all this other stuff to keep you distracted. And I think their souls are lost. I've even got a belief, this is really, I'll say it here, that when in the past, whenever there's been a tragedy, and your country is famous for this too, they always quote God. Let's pray for the families. Let's hope that, they always refer to God as this benevolent being. When COVID happened, they didn't mention God. They mentioned trust the science, the truth in science, safe and effective. And all our churches were closed. All our priests were silent. The vaccination centers were open. And every morning, the premier was on the TV like the governor going, this many people have died. Do the right thing. join us, basically join us. And I think people got converted in here. They removed God. I mean, basically, the whole marketing regime basically said, look, God's not up to this job. We are. And a lot of people have converted across. And this explains why they can do things like stand around and believing they're morally correct when a young girl like Dazzle dies. And so I think it goes profoundly deep in what's happening. But unfortunately, a lot of people imagine that below us is the depth of where we came from, all the mysteries. Above is all the miracles of what we could be. There's a lot of people just want to skim through life like they're a rock, just, you know, uh, thrown by some indolent god, and they just want to reach the grave. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, I did it. you know, and and that's how a lot of people are living. Where now it's a time, I think, to really question what is a human being, what are we here for, what do we want to leave to our next generation? What's more important? Because the decisions we make today um, will have a direct effect on the quality of our grandchildren's liberty. People
Yes.
will never meet. I think we're the most important generation, especially you Americans, the most important generation of human beings that could have ever existed, because we're literally on the verge of global totalitarianism where our souls won't want to inhabit. And
And,
it's there, and that's why I think we're the most important.
and Molly, before we get off, I should mention that a year and a half ago, a few of the first attack by our regulators here in Australia, we did a declaration called the Lighthouse Declaration, which is lighthousedeclaration.org or lighthousedeclaration.world. And we are now gathering lighthouse keepers. So these are not the high profile names. These are the people who stood in their truth and got attacked and hit by the lawfare over the last 4 years. So I encourage people to go to lighthousedeclaration.org or world and read it's a very simple, coming on from what Michael was just talking about. It's just talking about basic principles, informed consent, bodily autonomy, that censorship needs to end because we don't have a democracy and we don't have science if we don't have free debate and exchange of ideas. And we need to get the WHO and these big globalist things out of the doctor-patient relationship. So it's a very simple declaration. It doesn't mention any conspiracy theories. It's just saying, okay, where do we go from here? And we're now getting people from America, from the UK, from all over the world, similar people like us who just stood up and got attacked. And you don't have to be one of those to sign the declaration. Just go there, it's a simple read, and anyone can support it and sign the declaration and just say, we need to set a foundation for the future. And if it doesn't have bodily autonomy, informed consent, an end to censorship, and the freedom of your treating physicians to be able to make the right decision for you personally without having some government or corporation standing to decide what treatment you should have, then we're not going to have a sound foundation. So that's what the idea of the Lighthouse Declaration is.
I will link that in the show notes, lighthousedeclaration.org or .world, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect. We will link that. I want to thank you both so much for your time tonight. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Means a lot to me. I hope your week is off to a good start. Do either of you want to leave a final word before we wrap?
Just bless you and your audience.
I want to say this to America. You are the greatest country that has ever existed. The world needs a strong, liberated, decent, fair America if there's hope for any of us. There are so many countries where greed, takes over, and they basically want to just control people. And I know America has a lot of problems. It's never been perfect. But you can still lead the way to somewhere where all of us will want to live, because people are not sacrificing their lives trying to break into North Korea. They're doing it to get to the free countries. And so I wish you well, and don't give up, because we're your wingmen, but we're your small cousin wingmen. But that's how important you are, all built on that 3%. So I hope their freedom infects the world, and we get to leave our grandkids a world where they build shrines to us, because they're so grateful for their freedom.
Amen to that. I think that's a wrap for tonight. Thank you again for being here.
No worries.
I'm off. So thank you. I'm so
I'm moving on ever since you left. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm hanging on to every word you said. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm picking up the pieces, one by one. I've taken all the photos down. I'm staring at a space now that's not much fun without you around. I'm moving on ever since you left. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm hanging on to every word you said. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. And it ain't easy being silent when the sun goes down. And I can still hear your voice over my shoulder, but I'm not there when I look around. Yeah, I'm moving on ever since you left. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm hanging on to every word you said. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. It don't feel right. No, I never will without you here with me. I'm sick and tired of being lonely. I don't think I can take another moment. Why'd you have to call and leave? I'm moving on ever since you left. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm hanging on to every word you said. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm moving on ever since you left. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right. I'm hanging on to every word you say. I'm moving on, but it don't feel right.